Marines, Joe Mahoney, your assistant commandant here. I want to take a moment to talk to you today about a Corps-wide wall-to-wall inspection of our barracks. Between now and 15 March, we're going to take a look at every single barracks room, every squad bay, to ensure the health, well-being, and safety of each and every one of you.
The Marine Corps leadership has pledged to do a better job and inspect every barracks throughout the Marine Corps. I find that shocking, quite frankly, because for any senior officer in the Marine Corps to pledge that we will inspect barracks is just mind-blowing to me. I was raised in the Marine Corps where every Thursday the Marines had a field day, and then their squad leader or platoon sergeant would inspect their barracks prior to the platoon commander and our company commander inspecting it. And then monthly the battalion commander would walk through the barracks. When I was a battalion commander, I walked to the barracks every month. In fact, I walked to the barracks on the weekends to see how the Marines were doing. So that's a very important part of leadership to ensure that your Marines are well taken care of. And if the barracks in the Marine Corps are not suitable for living, we're doing a great disservice to our Marines, because that's a fundamental responsibility of leadership. And they're not hard to keep clean. And if you establish a standard right off the bat that these are your expectations, the Marines will meet them. But if you don't give a shit and you allow things to break and fall apart, and the Marines see that you don't care, then nobody cares, right? So as part of the company commander's inspection and the battalion commander's inspection we used to have a maintenance log for each barracks. And each room had a maintenance sheet on it. Any maintenance problems, anything of that nature, especially in the toilets, if there's any maintenance problems, any mold, any electrical issues, any plumbing issues, any leaks, the ventilation issues for the AC, especially at Camp Lejeune in the summertime. So these were all the things that I, as a battalion commander, or I expected my company commanders to look out for, the maintenance of the barracks. And then, and there's obviously an issue with base maintenance. I mean, they're overwhelmed, right? And they can't fix everything. So what we did was we had all these non-deployables, about 400 of them, that weren't going to deploy with us when we deployed. So rather than forcing these people to go out and train, which didn't really matter because they're not deploying with us, they're just pending discharge. So I didn't want to waste training resources, training time, and asked in a formation how many plumbers, carpenters, electricians, painters, welders do we have in this population. And quite a few hands went up, and we established our own maintenance team. And then we got the resources from base maintenance and said, hey, give us the paint, we'll do it ourselves. We used them to our advantage, so that a lot of the minor repairs we could take care of ourselves. Obviously you didn't want them messing around with the electrical work, but the plumbing, a lot of plumbing repairs, tightening this, fixing a leak, changing a gasket, things of that nature, the Marines could take care of themselves. And then what that did was it gave a sense of responsibility also. So there's a lot that can be done in-house at the unit level, and it needs to be done. But if, as a commander and as an officer, if you don't give a shit, then things start falling apart. And my other concern would be, where were the senior enlisted? Where was the first sergeant? How come he wasn't going through the barracks? Where was the sergeant major? I hear a lot of this from sergeant majors as I'm the senior enlisted advisor to the commander. Well, what does that really mean? You're responsible for the good order and discipline of that unit. So why were you not walking through these barracks? Why does it take a 4-star general to get on national TV, on social media, and to pledge that we're going to do a better job? And the sad part is, we're showing our ass to the world. The Marine Corps is supposed to be all about discipline and standards, and we can't maintain our barracks. Then some rocket scientist comes up with the plan that we're going to have civilian resident advisors. So we're taking our basic fundamental leadership responsibilities, handing them off to civilians, and we're going to put these resident advisors in the barracks to look after them, just like they do in college universities. Does that make sense? I don't think so. We tried that with base housing, and that fell flat on its face. There's all sorts of lawsuits floating around because base housing went down, and when people call in for maintenance, they were getting call centers in frickin' Romania to answer their needs. So, the whole idea is not to pass on the problem to the civilian side when the Marine leadership should take care of it. And if it shouldn't take a 4-star general, the assistant commandant of the Marine Corps, to announce to the world that, hey, we will do better. We will inspect every barracks wall to wall. Well, that's bullshit. That should have happened years ago. The problem is we have forgotten the fundamentals of leadership. That's the fundamental problem. And the results show it. We've just forgotten about how to take care and train Marines. And for a variety of reasons, because the military's turned into a social experiment. We just keep handing stuff off to civilians to take care of rather than doing it ourselves. When I was a second lieutenant, I checked into 7th Marines. My regimental commander was a Medal of Honor recipient. And I'll tell you what, it's pretty damn intimidating, Colonel Vargas, when you check in and Colonel Vargas wants to see you, and he's a Medal of Honor recipient. And so all of a sudden the standard is there, right? Because these are all, Vietnam veterans, heroes, and they're some tough dudes. I mean, they don't mess around. Physical fitness, mental toughness, standards was everything. We would get half an hour notice from the regimental commander to march a rifle platoon up to the regimental CP, standard inspection. Half hour. So what did that require? Everything had to be squared away. Your gear had to be squared away, your uniforms had to be squared away, your weapons had to be squared away, your knowledge had to be squared away. So we focus on the fundamentals. And the same thing would happen. Unannounced, the regimental commander would walk through the barracks. You had no idea where this guy was going to show up. He may walk in the chow hall and start eating with the Marines and talking to the Marines. So guess what that forced everybody else to do? To do their damn jobs. So my point being is it shouldn't take a 4-star general sitting in Washington, D.C. to tell the world, hey, we're going to do a better job, when officers and senior enlisted ought to be doing those jobs rather than worrying about other things that don't really matter and don't really help us to be better warfighters. And I'm telling you this, without those Marines, we're not warfighters. We're just a bunch of people walking around in fancy uniforms and making these statements. And now we got the Barracks 2030 plan, Force Design 2030. All those plans just become horse shit if we don't get the fundamentals of leadership right. So this is very important stuff. We need to pay attention to it. And I'm not sure to have resident advisors in the barracks. I think we need the sergeants. We need the duty NCOs. We need the officers of the day. These are time-tested systems we have. And just because we've stopped enforcing them doesn't mean we need to come up with new systems, because they're not going to be better. So it's a fundamental responsibility of Marine leadership to take care of our damn barracks. That's where it starts. And some of the pictures that you see in this video are mind-blowing. I just can't imagine. I mean, literally, I would blow a head gasket if my barracks looked like that. And my barracks were always inspection ready. When my battalion commander walked through there, he knew that Bravo 1-2 was squared away. When my regimental commander walked through, he knew that my barracks were squared away. And that's because I gave a shit. I walked through them every Friday. The Marines knew that. The company gunny knew that. The company first sergeant knew that. And they better have all walked through there before. And all the logbooks were laid out, and I was checking for stuff. And if there's any maintenance request that was outside the window, that was the first sergeant's responsibility, or the sergeant major's, to get on the phone and get it with base maintenance and sort the shit out. I mean, it's that simple. You don't need a resident advisor. We don't need to waste money on civilians, bringing civilians into our barracks, because that's going to cause a whole host of other issues, right? So the other issue is everything has really basically turned to shit in our barracks, but how come nobody's been held accountable? Now that the civilian leadership, Congress, is on us to, say, hey, what the hell's going on here? How come all these Marines are complaining about the barracks life and all these newspaper articles are coming out? But how come not a senior officer or enlisted has been held accountable for this? Not a single one. And this just didn't happen overnight. This has been going on for, at a minimum, a decade probably, 5 to 10 years. So what happens is we allow people to screw up, and then we don't hold them accountable. They get promoted, they get a lifetime pension, and then they leave a mess behind. Figure out who the hell was supposed to be responsible. Who's the base commander? Who's the division commander? Who's the MEF commander? And hold these people accountable. Why are they not being held accountable? And one of the reasons I've talked about in my previous video, I attended the Army warfighter exercises, and you would see the Army Chief of Staff there. He would sit there and listen to the debriefs. He would participate in these warfighter exercises. And General Szysinski, I'll always remember this, when I was an observer at the warfighter, he made a comment that still resonates with me 20 years later. He said, it takes 5,000 casualties to train a general. and I can't afford 5,000 casualties. And he looked at his general officers, so he said, you better pay attention to what's going on here because I'm watching you. And I'll guarantee you the pucker factor in that room went way up, way up. When the chief of staff is there watching the exercise and listening to the debrief. In my 3+ years at the MACTAF staff training program, we did our MEF exercises and several other exercises. Never once did I see the Commandant of the Marine Corps attend those. Not once. Not once did I see the Commandant of the Marine Corps attend a debrief. Yet, what happens is, we just promote these people, you know, to become general officers and become senior leaders, but we really don't know how they perform tactically. Or even in garrison. We don't know how their barracks look like. When's the last time the Commandant of the Marine Corps walked through the barracks? When's the last time Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps walked through the barracks unannounced? You know, if you go down to Camp Lejeune, the whole base knows you're coming. There's signs up there, you know, welcome General so-and-so, and all this nonsense. You know, show up there in the middle of the night, walk through the barracks. Show up there on the weekends, walk through the barracks, see what the Marines are doing. Are they just sitting around bored out of their minds, or do we have MWR facilities for them, the duty van to take them down to Onslow Beach? You know, that's leadership. That's taking care of your Marines. And, you know, part of what I was taught by some great leaders was you take care of your Marines as you would your own children. As a parent, I made sure my kids were active over the weekends. And as a commander, I made sure my Marines were active also. They're not just hanging around the barracks bored out of their minds. And I walked through, you know, unannounced to the barracks, say, hey, what's going on, Marines? How you doing? They saw that we genuinely cared about them. And I expected my subordinate commanders to also do the same. And pretty soon it spread. You saw platoon commanders walking through the barracks, company commanders, platoon sergeants, you know, sergeant major, everybody walking through the barracks. They generally gave a shit. And that's what it's all about. If something busted, we got it fixed. We didn't let it just, you know, turn to shit and then have the news media find out because some Marine got tired of this and reported it. So we need to do better. That's all I got. Stay rugged. Con out.